Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm Sarah Hamaker, and I'm glad you joined me. My guest today is Jennifer Crosswhite, whose favorite thing is discovering how much there is to love about America the Beautiful and the great outdoors. So welcome to my show, Jennifer.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me on today. I'm thrilled to talk about writing and, of course, romantic suspense in particular.
I know, because, romantic suspense is the coolest genre ever. Am I right?
It really is. It really is. You get like the best of both worlds. You get all the romance. You get all the scary feelings. You just really get all of the whole, rainbow of feelings in romantic suspense. I think that's one of the things that makes it fantastic.
Not to mention the satisfying endings.
Yes.
Of especially Christian romantic suspense. We bring them all home, people. There's happy endings here.
That is exactly it. The bad guy gets caught. The hero gets the girl. Like, what more could you possibly want?
Nothing. I'm telling you, it's the best genre ever.
It is. It's fantastic.
But it's not easy to write. I mean, let's just face it. It's not easy to write. What do you feel is the hardest part of writing romantic suspense?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is you are really writing in some ways, two separate stories. So you've got your romance that you are writing where you're trying to get the hero and the heroine together and all of the complications that go along with that. And then you have this whole other suspense line. And my characters in particular are ordinary people who get caught up in some extraordinary circumstances. And so they don't always have like skills or backgrounds or know how to handle these things. They're really kind of making it up as they go along. And so trying to figure out how to blend both of those things makes it an interesting bit of a challenge. Now, the one thing I do enjoy about it, I think, which makes it kind of fun, is that it's that particular challenge of the suspense line that does draw the hero and the heroine together. They get to see each other under really difficult circumstances. They get to really test out if their love is really true, if it's going to go the distance. And so in some ways, I think it's really complementary for that. But at the beginning, and I'm working on the third book in the series right now, at the beginning, when I'm trying to pull it all together, it is really challenging.
Yeah, and I love that, like you said about the hero and the heroine can be together in circumstances that really test them. I think that, we never know how we're going to react under every circumstance possible until we're in that circumstance. And, stressful circumstances are definitely a good way to see, is this person really made of what I think they're made of, or are they?
Yes, exactly.
Or are they not?
Exactly.
And it's kind of fun that we get to make them have all these challenging circumstances to get them to, resolve whatever they need to resolve so that they can be together.
Yes. It's not the thing you would personally ever want to go through, but it's a great way to torture your characters, and it's true. I think it is really sort of that crucible of refinement where you're testing and seeing, because there are certainly, and we know this once you've lived a few years on this planet, there are people that are fantastic if things are going well and if you're having a good time and life is great. And then there are those people in your life that they're the bedrock, they're the solid people. They're there when life is hard and things aren't going really great for you. And obviously those are the kind of people that, we all want in our lives. And I want those kinds of things for my heroes and heroines, for each other. So it's really fun to kind of play with that.
Do you find any frustrations in writing romantic suspense? Anything that really frustrates you about writing the genre?
I think one of the things that's sort of interesting is that you have to make you're always sort of writing that fine line of believable but pushing the edge of it. So you want to put people in really strange and difficult situations. You want the stakes to escalate. You want things to get more challenging. And sometimes you're kind of running up against the edge of believability there. It has to be believable. People have to get lost in the story world and feel like it can happen. But sometimes as you're thinking about escalating stakes, and one of the questions we ask ourselves as writers is, what's the worst thing that could happen right now? And so, sometimes it's like, well, they could die, but then the story would be over. So that's not a good way to go. Besides that, what's one of the, emotionally devastating things that they could go through? And, I sort of laugh because these characters I've been with, I had a previous series, and this is sort of a spin-off series. Some of these characters have been around for, going on 6 or 7 books now. And one of them just kind of made this remark, I've hung around these people for a while, and they get into a lot of trouble. And, you're like, this group of people, what is wrong with them that they constantly are having these kinds of trouble? So, there's a part where you're like, I don't know, is the same group of friends going to continue to have these kinds of problems? But you want to make it believable. And some of the things that happen really, truly could happen. And Off the Map, one of the things that comes up is social media and how the stalker, I'm not giving anything away by saying this, but the stalker is able to keep track of where they are by one of their friends' social media posts. And that's a real legitimate issue. And one of the things the reviewers had said to me was, oh my gosh, you're right, that could so easily happen. And so that's where I like to play, is in that space of people being able to say, wow, that could really happen to me. I need to be careful about that, or I need to be aware of that. And so balancing the what could really happen with the unbelievability, trying to stay in that space is probably one of the biggest challenges that I face.
Yeah, I know. And, we want to be accurate and keep that believability because so many people, they don't realize, like you said about social media, to track them, to find them. They don't really think about that. And, I guess my husband and I are both probably a little, I don't want to say that we're paranoid people, because we're not. But, we never posted, and we still don't post any pictures of our kids on social media.
Right.
And we only refer to them by their first initial. That's our choice. And I know you can set up parameters, and you can do, and we do that too. So we talked about it when, my daughter finally got an iPhone at her only smartphone at, right before senior year of high school. And I was like, okay, make sure you take off don't enable location. It doesn't need to know you where you are all the time. Don't do it.
Exactly.
So. As they did with they had iPods before that only used Wi-Fi, which was great for car conversations.
Right, exactly. You've got some control there. Yeah.
Right, yeah, but just that helped them to kind of realize that what they post online is there, and it could be there forever. So just be careful you're not posting things, and that we weren't going to start their digital footprint for them.
Exactly.
That we didn't feel like that was our job as parents. But just that knowledge that, and, hey, these things are going to be around. How is that going to impact you? And, it's just one aspect. I think technology has been both a wonderful thing for writers and kind of a crazy thing for reality, right?
I love that I don't have to, go to the library to do research anymore. It's at my fingertips.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people with bad intentions, they're going to always find the way around the system. They're going to find the loopholes, the things that normal, everyday, innocent people aren't going to think about. And I think one of the things about being a suspense writer is that you do get a little paranoid, maybe. We know the things that can happen and how things can go wrong. And so I'm always constantly thinking of the what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? And sometimes that's just really great ideas for stories and where they come from. And, you'll see a newspaper article or an article that comes through your feed or something. You're like, oh my gosh, that's a great story idea. But I do think in the real world too, like you said, when my kids are young adults now, but when they were little and I had a blog even before Facebook, I gave them nicknames. There were no pictures of them. They was like their shadows or from way in the distance, or because I was, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, some creepy, crazy person's going to track down where we live and steal my kids out of the front yard. That's how my mind works. So
I know. I'm with you, Jennifer. Not that I was really that Not that I mean, we let our kids do a lot of things, go places
Right.
and do things
Right.
and teach them what our phone number is and our address and
Right.
who they should go to and all this kind of stuff. And we leave a lot of their safety in God's hands because that's where it needs to
Right.
be.
Yeah.
But I do think about it. I'm like, well, I don't want, even if I never knew about it, I don't want anyone taking my kid's picture.
Yeah.
And
don't want to
doing
make
who
it
knows what with it. I mean,
easy.
it's just, and I know some people think that is just going a little too far. I mean, we went even as far as to tell the school that they couldn't post our kids' pictures on their social media accounts. I'm like, nope,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a digression, but it is that same kind of just being aware of your surroundings
Yes.
and what's going on. Because for a suspense writer, I'm like in a car park going, or garage going, okay, I don't want to park in the middle.
Right.
I'm not parking there. I'm parking near the exits or near the outside. So
Right.
I think
so
about
true,
things
right?
like that.
We all the time, because we're thinking, oh, I could put my heroine in this situation and this bad thing might happen to her because she's not paying attention and she's distracted or she's this or that.
Yeah.
And because we don't want them to be stupid characters, right? They're intelligent women who are strong and capable, but things happen. And sometimes you're not always 100% vigilant, or there's just something you're not aware of or you didn't think of. And those are the kind of little holes that I try to pick at, so that the bad guys, those are kind of their characters of opportunity. And so they're trying to get in and looking for those little spots. And so, I don't know if that part of our brain, it just never shuts off.
No, I don't think it does.
I think writing about it is like the healthy expression of this kind of concern. We can put it out into pages, and then, it goes out to the world, and you can kind of forget about it.
I totally agree with that. And I also love that your characters are kind of ordinary, because that's kind of how I write mine. Mine are not police officers or in law enforcement or the military. They're just, ordinary people who just happen to get sucked into extraordinary circumstances. And
exactly.
For me, that is even more fun. I mean, they interact with other, law enforcement and other people, of course, but I kind of like that. I kind of like not having I feel like that's a little subgenre that's not really explored as much.
Well, and I think, as we all know, just from our own personal experiences, whenever we're stretched and we're put in circumstances that are just way above our head, that's when we grow the most spiritually. And so I love developing that aspect of my character's life. They are just so far over their head, and they don't know what's the right thing to do, and it's going to grow them spiritually. It's going to make them rely on God and learn the lessons that they need to learn for the next stage of their life. And I think that part is very realistic as to what we all go through just as human beings. And so if they were more professional, if that was like their job, and certainly, like you say, I have police officers and firefighters and other people that are in there, that there are things that are in their job description, but part of that growing is taking you out of the area where you're not capable. You're beyond what you know how to handle, and that's when we have to turn to God and figure out what our next step is and how to surrender to Him and to trust Him for working things out for us. And so I love taking my characters through that.
So we talked a little bit about this, but where else do you go for inspiration for your plots?
Well, a lot of it really does come from just the world around. I have, back when we used to get a newspaper, I still have a file with newspaper clippings of ideas that I thought would be really interesting. And, I have a whole, of course, like most authors, have a whole file of story ideas. And some people have said this. I've heard other authors say this too. Sometimes you do have a dream. Like you'll have this weird dream, and most of it doesn't make any sense. But there'll be like a little nugget in there, and you're like, ooh, that could be a story. And so usually it's something that's been simmering for a long time. So like Off the Map, I started thinking about that before I finished my previous book. So it was a couple books, and I'm usually thinking that far ahead. and where I can go with the series and the spin-offs and the characters and those kinds of things. And it was just an interesting conflagration of a few different ideas. And I had always had this idea of my brothers and I say this in the author note, but when we used to go camping a lot as kids, and so we had a tent trailer, and on the table in the tent trailer was printed this map of the United States with all the highways on it. I don't know why they did that. It wasn't like you're going to be looking at your table while you're driving, right? You know, I don't know.
Right.
But it was kind of strange to think about it. But as kids, we would sit around that table and look at it and plot, where could we go and where does this road lead? And, you know, we would plan all these trips. And so that was one idea, like, hey, what if there was this group of siblings that had always planned this road trip together? What might happen to them on the road trip? And then I combined that with this other idea about some high school sweethearts reconnecting as adults, and would they still have the same, you know, chemistry? Had they become different people? Were they still the same people? What would that look like? And so started pulling these ideas, and then, you know, it's not hard to find stories about people stalking other people. And so somehow I managed to weave all these ideas together, and it turned out, I mean, I was pretty happy with how it turned out. But, yeah, I think I tell, because I teach writing a lot too, I tell people it's like I call it the compost pile. You know, you take these scraps from everything that you've read, in fiction, nonfiction, you know, the news, people's experiences, your experiences. They're all sort of like the little, you know, carrot tops and potato peels and everything that you throw into the compost pile, and they transform into something completely different, something very organic that, you know, hopefully helps your plot to grow. So they don't often have anything resembling where they originally started, but they contribute to morphing and changing until you have a plot that comes out of that. And so I think everything that we experience tends to kind of go into that compost pile.
Yeah, no, I agree. And news articles and little tidbits they're just fun, because then you look at them and you're like, what if ...
Exactly, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's just kind of fun to, you know, have a real life something be the impetus to, you know, to what started your whole story, because sometimes they just come out of the blue, but sometimes it is something that we read, something that we see, and you're right, we just kind of tuck it away if we are working on something else, or it germinates, and sometimes it comes out to be kind of different from what it went in as, and that's part of the creative process that can be such fun. So I could definitely see that's a good analogy for the idea process, I think.
Right. And I think even, you know, when you first start drafting your book, what it ends up is usually quite a bit different than how it starts out anyway. So.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. Well, we are out of time, Jennifer, but I so appreciate you being on my show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed talking about it. It's been lots of fun.
You've been listening to The Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I've been talking to Jennifer Crosswhite. And you can hear an excerpt from her latest book, Romantic Suspense, Off the Map, right after this.